All right. Hello.
Hello,
Good to see you.
Mr. Klinghoffer. How are you?
I'm okay. Oh, yeah, good. I'm well rested enough for this. Even
That's
though I fear that I'm going to sound enormously ignorant because I really don't know much about electronics or anything.
well, it's
So,
good that this isn't an electronics exam then.
okay, good. Well, um, yeah, when I say much, I mean anything. But uh,
Can you
yeah,
spell?
let's have at it. Probably, most likely, I can. I'm a better speller than I think, but I think I'm I then get docked because I rarely know for certain whether I spelled something correctly. But no,
So you spell it right, and
electronics,
then
I
you
got.
cross it out.
No, I spell it right and then I look it up, doubting myself.
Well, that's good. Belt and braces.
Yeah.
Can never be too sure.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. I've been kind of ill the last, I feel like it's been a month or something, just cold after cold after cold. I don't know whether it's COVID or something. And then this morning I woke up and I got this really weird thing in my neck, which feels like almost at some points a pinched nerve. And I can't look up and across properly.
Uh,
I spoke to a couple of people and they said they've had the same thing. So I don't know whether it's related to a virus or something, but it's weird. I mean, I'm sure it'll pass in a day or so. So no
I
big.
think, yeah, usually I kind of in honest of situations, and I think it's just kind of a like an amalgamation of all the strange movements and lifting or taxing that you've done on the collection of muscles, and then it just finally just says, "All right," and it's really just probably yeah, probably like a pain message being sent to your brain, like "Watch out." I get that all the time. I get it in the car, or actually, I think it's more. Uh, Maybe I don't get it in the car, but I get it all the time, and then I can't actually turn around and look, or this way for you. I can't, yeah, I can't look over my shoulder.
Not great for safety, especially as I'm driving a couple of hours up the motorway today. But I'm hoping that it will. Oh, yeah, there it goes. Okay, well, I'll make sure that I'm really good on checking the mirrors, and then I'll just have my wife check for the extra like 15 degrees or whatever that I can't get.
Oh yeah, if she's coming with she can just sit backwards and report.
That's it.
Yeah, that won't be too safe either, though.
No, I don't think it would. But I do have three kids, so if we combine all of our eyes, it's
Oh
gonna be.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure one of them would enjoy sitting backwards. It's like those old station wagons in the 70s and 80s. Anyone who got the youngest kid always got the back looking out backwards. It was always kind of a thrill.
And the good thing about being young, apart from the fact you were the only one who could fit in the back, was the fact that you didn't feel sick if you were traveling backwards.
Yeah, yeah, right. No, that just comes later when life sickens you in other ways, and you choose to pretend that it's about that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe let's not get into that because this is too early on in the. So if this isn't going to turn into a podcast or anything, the idea is fundamentally that I try and get in touch with people who have been using the big trees for a good long while. People who are doing it professionally, who understand about sound and all that kind of stuff. And you are amongst those.
Well,
So
that's a compliment in itself.
on not at all. So yeah, I spoke to Ronnie Vanucci, I think I said to you, from the Killers while he was driving from Texas to Utah, I think. So had a good chat with him about various things. Basically, I've got like 11 questions. And if you
But
like,
which you sent me in advance, didn't you? Did you send me
oh, did
those?
I? Maybe I
I don't know.
can't remember.
No, I think maybe you may have, but I didn't look at them. So anyway, this will
That's
be off
good.
the cuff.
Well, off the cuff is absolutely fine, and don't basically I'm going to clip them down probably because the idea is to put it up on Instagram as just little snippets of like, these are the people that use the big trees, and it's kind of like it's not heritage, is it? It's that, you know, pedigree of people using it and what they use it for, and just I feel like it doesn't get as much love as it should,
Hmm.
and no one else is gonna give it if I don't. So I'm asking. The next best thing is for me to force other people to say how great they think it is. So
Right. Well, I will certainly do that, and I have the tendency to be long-winded and like oddly philosophical and nonsensical. So I'm sure you'll get something usable.
all of those are greatly welcomed. So yeah, just be all of those things as much as you want.
Okay.
Okay, so and if you kind of say, "Oh no, that was nonsense," then I can always cut it out. I will cut it out afterwards, unless it's really
Okay.
nonsense, in which case I'll just repeat it on like a 3-second loop.
Okay.
Um, okay, so question one: Who are you and what do you do?
My name is sadly Josh, and I'm a musician and a songwriter and a an all-around sound enthusiast and appreciator.
Perfect. Well done. Full marks for that one. Okay, this one is where you're going to be, the leash is off, so it could turn into a long rambling answer, which is absolutely fine. When and where or from who did you first hear about the big trees?
Well, in classic fashion, I would say that Eric Avery from Jane's Addiction and many other musical projects is the first person whom I spoke with about the big trees and who we kind of, he kind of explained how it worked, and I think he name checked someone else that had kind of turned him onto it or something, or he was giving me a couple of references, and I because of that conversation, I thought instantly like, oh, I need to get one as soon as possible. But classically, I already owned one because I had purchased it along the way. Because I mean, most likely because of the way it looks and just the fact that it has visible tubes, and I whatever loose understanding I had of it at the time I purchased it, I probably just put that on on the way back burner because I'm sure I bought it on tour. There was a point where I used to know where I bought everything, and kind of had a good handle on my collection of equipment. But at a certain point, with the amount of travel I was doing and the amount of gear that I was procuring that I couldn't put into immediate use, it got a little out of hand. So I remember getting excited about getting getting one as soon as I can or as soon as I could, and then I had this little vision of it sitting on my shelf because for as much stuff as I have, I do kind of know where it all is. So I raced over to my workspace and there it was, and I've been sort of using it ever since on pretty much everything.
That's really cool. So what you can't remember where you first came across it? Because that's really interesting. Because I remember because I think it was your one of your texts when you were with Chili Peppers, and he got in contact and said, "Oh, Josh wants to buy one of these. I'm going to buy it for him." But I just wonder where your first contact may have been, because this is so intriguing because it's all word of mouth. We haven't, well, up
Well,
this year we haven't really advertised, so it would have been via word
well
of mouth,
that
you know.
yeah, and that would make even more sense that it didn't that I hadn't had a recollection of purchasing it. If maybe would it have been Ian Shepherd? I mean, he may have reached out. Because yeah, I especially in a case like that, which doesn't happen too often, but if someone recommends something and then it's or Chris Warren perhaps, I'm surrounded by gear enthusiasts, and we just look at the internet and read about things and kind of conference about it, and um, or about so I just I can't remember exactly where I got my first one. I want to say it was used because I do remember, I think I told you the the red LED was always out, which was no problem. It didn't affect the sound anyway. But then I gave it to a friend, and she tried to fix it. But that would have been after I started using it more. Yeah, so I can't remember where and exactly when I had it, but when I do remember Eric Avery is the one who sort of he had one, and we were talking about. I think I was probably talking about something similar to what it does, and he said, "Oh, well, that sounds awful lot like the big trees." And do you have one? And I said, "Oh no." And then so it turns out I did, and yeah. But I think Billy Bush from Garbage is the person who one of the people that Eric mentioned as a supporter of, and maybe even Butch Vig, maybe I don't that I can't remember, but yeah, Eric was playing with Garbage at the time, and there was definitely a lot of talk of the big trees in that camp.
Yeah, that's right. I think Billy was, and I can't even remember how I got in contact with Billy now, but yes, for sure. I think he told Eric about it, and then Eric bought one. And then yeah, the rest is history. So question 3, describe briefly your initial first-hand experience of it. So obviously you've been speaking to people about it, and then you bought one, hadn't used it. What did it feel like when you first used it? And can you remember what you used it on first? And I'm asking a
Well,
lot. Appreciate it.
oh yeah, no, well, no, it's I mean, when I find because being a studio person or a studio operator, let's say a studio or recording gear collector, is something that I sort of held off on for a long time because I had my very basic and sort of elementary demo process, which involved my Tascam cassette 8-track, and I used that even in a fairly basic way, just for a few reasons. But I mean, I started doing that as a 15 year old, and I just there were other things to spend money on. I didn't understand. Just studio gear wasn't my business or whatever. And so the big trees, as it was explained to me that initial time, it sounded like something that I totally see why I would have kind of it would have not even been on my radar at first. But then I got very excited by the idea of sort of throwing absolutely everything through it. Every instrument you could think of, every part of a mix, or just kind of, and then and then here's where the technical and the sort of scientific aspect of it, which I absolutely appreciate and sort of think about in a very abstract sort of totally like sort of almost childish way. I'm attracted to it, but I don't understand. If you push further on this, I probably couldn't answer. Maybe it's like my spelling. Maybe I know a little more than I think I do. But just I have an interest in recording equipment and just recording techniques and the way innovation or where innovation led us to from in the last 100 years. This is full stop, not just with sound and acoustic, but we've quickly moved past that. So now we're in a mostly digital world, and recording has become digital. And I remember making an album in the 98 or 99, very early in Pro Tools, and even in my sort of opinionated youthful period, there was just something I felt that was I wasn't opposed to it in any way, but I just felt like there was still a lot of work to be done in the analog world. And now I think that more and more just about everything, and when you look back at the amount of time that we were recording on tape through analog equipment, it's a very, very small window, like I don't when whatever, like 20, 30 years, for anything beyond 4 tracks, from when the first 8-track tape machine came around to 24 track 2-inch tape. I don't know, what is that, 30 years until Pro Tools comes around and sort of really, or digital recording becomes more of a standard. I mean, it's just such a finite window, and I mean, everything I grew up listening to is, was put through, valve equipment, and had the sonics that I, or what, like everything about the sound of everything that I grew up listening to is to do with this equipment. So when I saw that this was obviously the stuff looks handmade in the presentation, so you can instantly tell that this is done with love and care. And obviously I know you now, and you're one of the sweetest people on earth. I feel like there was an instantaneous understanding of the kind of person or people behind this product or these kind of innovations that has a deep love for this, and this, and is spending their time on earth conceiving, producing, marketing, selling these things. And anyone who does something like that, even if I don't have a technical understanding of it, I understand all of that. And then first, the first bass track I recorded through it, was just, the hair on my arms stood up. It's like, that's incredible. Whatever. Then I had to, as soon as I could, I got a second one so I could try and put whole mixes through it, stereo. So just, Eric and I talking about, certain electronic artists, who he read somewhere feeds their whole mixes through it. There's stuff like that. Any piece of equipment that, or anything, but any piece of equipment that does what I just said, like that reminds you that there are people that care in a certain way about what they do, and clearly they're doing it to inspire. I mean, I'm all over. I feel like the unit itself brings about, whether you have an understanding of it or not, technically, it brings about a level of inspiration just because of, on one hand, the simplicity of it, but on the other, it's the physics and the science is not simple, but there's sort of like a raw element, sort of, warmth and heat and, current and all that stuff. So anyway, just, instantaneously, I felt a connection to it and imagined and numerous ways that I felt like it could inspire, even if I didn't have the ideas right at that particular moment. I knew that this is a thing that I'm going to use forever. And then I quickly learned that you make something called the flying squirrel, and I love squirrels, so I'm sold.
That's perfect. That's great. Thank you. That is so interesting.
Try cutting that down to 3 minutes. Try cutting that down.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I think maybe I'll put a longer form one up on YouTube or something, and then just because it's like, if I love hearing it, other people are going to love hearing it as well. And just like hearing an artist speak about their creative process and how they feel about certain tools that they use and processes that they fall into and all that kind of stuff. It's just really interesting, especially I think it's interesting as a fan, but it's really interesting as somebody who does similar things or, works in a similar area. Because it's like there'll be things which are the congruent with that person, and there'll be things which are different. But it's all, it's fascinating to see how somebody else's creative life plays out in their heads and through whatever they do.
Well, and if you want, we can go back through the questions, and I can try and give short soundbite versions. But maybe I'll try and work in the next thought to one of my
the
next answers.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know whether this really follows on. Yeah. Question 4, is that still how you used it, or has it evolved? I mean, from the answer, that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense as a follow-on question, but if you want to try and answer it, then
yeah. I mean, if we're piggybacking off the last question, I mean, it is in the sense that I think of it toward toward the beginning of the genesis of a sound or an idea or a part, because I know what it can do, and I know at the same time there's probably loads more that I haven't even experienced yet, either by combining it with other elements or um, just playing around with some of the most subtle aspects of recording, like level. And this is something that I still have a sort of a ridiculously hard time memorizing: line level, mic level, like all that stuff, because I don't spend my time engineering myself all anymore at all, really. But I kind of I get so annoyed with myself sometimes for not just yeah, it absolutely. I mean, it inspires. I have all the bass on this album I'm making right now going. It was going through it, and you so kindly built me a couple other versions, and it's just all over the place, and you can kind of think in advance what you want to achieve, and the parameters or the the area of creativity of your kind of creative room, if you will, is all constructed by the big trees. I was like, or let's say the forest.
that's great. Yeah, no, that's cool. So it's almost like you have I'm going to resist using the artist palette metaphor, but it's you've got a toolkit and you're like, okay, well, this is the job we need to do. And I can imagine that the big trees will fulfill this function. And, maybe this line is a little bit humdrum and we can maybe just give it a little bit more edge through it or whatever it is.
Well, I mean, I think we live in a time where we have such an embarrassment of riches, and you could have absolute option paralysis, especially, and that's one of the reasons I've always resisted digital recording. And I don't know how to use computers because I couldn't imagine sitting in front of the seemingly unending list of plugins that one could just twiddle with, because all of that stuff is good and fun. And for me, the most exciting thing is having an idea or kind of like a sonic concept, knowing that there's a box or a piece of tactile equipment that I could set in front of me, plug into, come up with something either similar to what I was imagining or something wildly different that'll take me off on another tangent, and there it is. And it's sort of, and you commit to it, like I think especially these days, committing to a sound or committing to an idea and making choices is very important, or else you could spin off into a mad world of sort of incompletion. And yeah, I think this, and looking back to what I said earlier about, for me at least, and I feel like if other people knew the story or were able to know more about you, um, anything that is made with the amount of love and care that you make this stuff with or conceive it with, it like that's, you just know you're in good hands, and that's not to say that other equipment or other analog or digital isn't made with the same love and care, but I happen to have a relationship with this stuff and with you, and just through my friendship with you, I know some of your tastes and interests, and like it's just a kind of a level of trust, and I feel like, again, in this day and age, for a creative person, it's almost like having a dependable vehicle. You can get in this, you get it. You can open the door, get in, and you're safe. Because it can do anything you need, really. I mean, it can be clean, it can be dirty, it could be really dirty, it could be disgusting, it could be comforting and warm. Yeah. So it's so many of the, yeah, it's like it's an all-terrain vehicle.
And I think the thing is that I don't know whether I can extend that that vehicle metaphor, but when you have something where the options are not limitless and the options are all good, then it makes it a lot easier. Like it's less stressful. If you've got infinite options of, you know, how to set the guitar amp up, and you know what amp are you going to use, what guitar, what, you know, virtual mic placement are you going to use, which room are you going to, like, which great recording studio impulse response are you going to use, all of that stuff. What you really want is, okay, I want to plug something in and feel like, oh, that's kind of cool, and then you're going, then you're off to the races. And it's,
Yeah.
with digital, it's not quite as immediate as that. And they, you know, they do
Well, it can be quite immediate, but it's limitless, you know. It's you have everything at your fingertips, so you really have to have a dedicated and kind of confident, like a dedication and a confidence in your idea, if you're gonna, you know, execute it digitally and then feel like this is right, you know. Whereas, not to say it's better to do it in an analog way or with analog equipment, but you know, there is kind of a comfort in committing to something and just liking it and really connecting with it. And I mean, because you can have too much analog gear. Some people out there may have far too much equipment. I don't know. I don't know who, but no. I mean, I certainly I struggle with choosing which amplifier to reach for, and luckily I know the good people at Audio Kitchen, and I now have Chopper stuck in front of me, and it pretty much is my go-to recording amp. So, but again, I mean, I trust what you make, and you know, if there's something that I feel like, you know, the amplifier isn't giving me, or like, or something like the big trees couldn't give me, then I have other options. But I mean, it is rare that I run into that. It is really rare that I run into that. And again, another thing that I think is interesting or great, because we kind of juxtaposed to how, you know, maybe it is simple and like there's a simplicity to it technically. I don't know, but you know, you can obviously go as deep as you can go technically if you have that kind of mind. But what was I going to say? Oh, there's something beautiful about being able to shape your sound and your tone with the amount, or with the spec. There's something beautiful about being able to shape your tone in such a wide and various way, but at the same time, it's demanding of you your playing and your touch and the human response to, you know, it is a real sort of conversation. It's not like you put it on and you have an unrecognizable tone. You could use the big trees or any of this stuff as you know, and if it's set right, you wouldn't even know it's on, because there can be the most transparent sort of thing. Obviously, that's a pretty specific setting you'd have, but I mean, the minute you turn it on, if you're not the kind of person or player that appreciates or is able to play something that would then inspire your next move, then, you know, you might want to get, you know, like a harmonic flanger, you know, double five-phase pedal, because then it'll be something totally different. But I mean, that's what I appreciate about it. It really helps you have a relationship with and a further understanding of the part that you have either written or that you are working out. And you know, it can often, you know, lead to a more inspiring and just fun kind of relationship with your playing, with your own playing.
That's great, thank you. I'm not going to be able to get out the workshop door. My head is increasingly getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Where are we at? I think I've got less than 10 minutes left, so I might have to shoot you another link if we run out of time, which
Well,
I think.
I have one too. I have one too. I have a Zoom thing. I have a
Okay.
Zoom account.
Um, is there any other tool that you have used or use for a similar purpose?
Um, no, not I. Well, not that I can think of. I mean, because until the big trees, I mean, let's see. Yeah, because as I said, like I've only gotten or become interested in studio equipment and had my own studio in the last 2 years. So that's where I've never used the big trees live. I don't think. Yeah, I haven't. I've used fake plastic trees live a lot, but yeah. So in the studio, and I'm trying to think. No, because like um, yeah, I've used many things to do what I now reach for the big trees for, but they're not the same thing. Either an amplifier. It's like just putting a vocal or some drums through an amplifier, or I'm sure engineers around me have used all manner of direct boxes, and I've used guitar effects pedals to achieve like a distortion and overdrive or a buzz, or you know I have a variac in the wall to control lights. The idea of starving a unit of power is has always been interesting to me. So yeah, I've definitely used other things and am familiar with the concepts that I feel like this is a combination of. So, but nothing that can sort of do a clean and a dirty, and and just kind of and an overall sort of tonal gosh, just like a tonal makeover, like a really subtle tonal makeover. I mean, I feel like that's 3 or 4 different things together.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. Well, that's great. Thank you. Um, we'll skip 6 because it's why, in what circumstances does the big trees perform differently? But if we're not comparing it to anything, it doesn't really make sense. So we go on to the
Oh,
next.
it's small. It's smaller than an amplifier.
That's true. Um, is there a sense in which you kind of touched on this already? Is there a sense in which the big trees makes your process more efficient or easier, or B, easier to land on something inspiring?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because you could leave town with however many guitars or basses or any instrument that you can plug into something, and take only the big trees and be fine. If you wanted, obviously, if you wanted certain kinds of effects, that doesn't do that. But if you were just trying to record music, if you had a couple of cables and the big trees and somewhere to plug them into, you could get your material recorded. And I'm sure, then you could probably get creative with your equipment and produce the effects that you didn't bring. But the big trees will get you going, and you could make a whole record with it. And I think it is the kind of thing that if you let it, or if you're interested at all and start kind of learning a little bit more about it, could absolutely inspire new ways of thinking, new sounds, new ideas, new ways to kind of pervert it. Yeah, I mean, I use two uh, together sometimes, driving one into the other. I enjoy playing around with that. Like I said, I started putting whole mixes through two and just trying to dial them in. I can't keep my hands off the knobs, so then I'm twiddling them the whole time the mix is going down. And it's that kind of thing. Like especially when they're called cute things like root and branch. I mean, you're doing what I had I was very lucky to experience the end of like analog recording, and you're sort of performing a mix, and you're making adjustments on the fly, and you're having a relationship with your song or your music, right the way to the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, you're just reminded by those glowing tubes that your sound is going, you know, is being affected by those. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really, you're right when you talk about the non-automated mix, because every time you listen to it, when whatever it is has a ride, whether that be a volume ride or an EQ change or whatever it is, you can you can remember actually printing the mix where you did those rides. And it's such a, it's almost like a diary entry in a, on a different level. Obviously the song is, and the recording process is, but then the mix becomes that as well, because you were so hands-on during the process of printing the final mix. It's, yeah, it's, I'd not really thought about it like that, but that's fun.
And I'm, because I'm so not a technical person when it comes to anything really. But I mean, for me, it's all sort of stories that, you know, and this is kind of how life is in general. We're all just telling ourselves some sort of story to get through. And you know, some people have more technical information and they might have more of an answer there. But you know, uh, for me, even if it can't hear what it's doing at all times, if you throw your drums through the big trees, uh, and sort of boost the level and have it clean, you know that it's going through, you know, a tube piece of gear. And you know, that's something that not everybody could afford um, to have loads of. But I don't know, it's just, you know, there's something that it does to your mind. I mean, I'm sure there's people that right now would say like, oh, who cares, or whatever it is. But I mean, that's just what kind of person are you? And it really doesn't matter. You know, it's like some people might get off knowing that their mix is going through some sort of tape emulator, and that's great too. So it's just all kind of, it's all it's all in your mind, you know. And then if you turn it up a little bit, you'll hear it louder, even if it's just louder. But then you could shape the EQ. I don't know, like you're uh, when I became more and more familiar with signal path and how many things your sound or your individual elements in your mix or in your song are going through different shape, you know, different model, you know, like different things that are molding and shaping your sound. um yeah, I mean, putting it through a big trees and even using it in the most subtle sort of uh, kind of invisible ways, to me, is just comforting.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Right. Do you know what? I'm going to stop it and I'm going to try and send you another link. So hang on one sec.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
Yep.
Recording in progress. Okay, great.
Yeah. All right, we're back. Sorry, I hope this isn't too nonsensical and like uh rambly.
Your brain, I think, works in a similar way to mine in that um there isn't, and I said this when I was talking to Ronnie, and it's something that was become more apparent. I mean, this sentence is like a testament to the fact of, for what I'm about to say. I don't take the most direct route to the summit. I kind of wander around in concentric circles and slowly get closer and closer to the point that I want to get to. And it doesn't come very easily to me to know either what the next step is or what the fastest, most efficient way of getting to say what I want to say is. I kind of have to feel around in the dark all my way to the end of the sentence. So yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, and I think I'm constantly trying to control my environment and get the most efficient, uh, just be the most efficient I can in every way. But you know, especially in this kind of case where I'm not, or no, in every walk of life, I'm not forced to articulate myself at all. You know, really, and especially in detail. And that's why when I was in the Chili Peppers, I used to, every time we would have a press or interviews, you know, I would sort of, I don't want to do this, and then I always wound up having a good time because it is a creative act. You know, like I don't have to articulate and express my thoughts on this music at all. And in doing so, I come to appreciate it in a different way, because I try not very hard not to lie or be kind of like just sort of pointlessly sanguine about something, but like coming up with how to say something that you might not be a fan of or whatever, creative and non-insulting way, or is a creative act, and likewise praising something to the face of the creator without sounding like a gushing twat.
Well, you haven't sounded like that at all. So, assuming that that comment was directly aimed at me, I thank you very much and appreciate it.
Yeah, it was. And yeah.
Well, yeah, I
And
mean,
the gushing twat was directed at me.
yeah, what were we talking about? Oh, what we were talking about was how knowing that something is running through, in this case, the big trees, just makes something better. And you can't necessarily hear exactly what it, or I feel it seems to me, it seems to me that sometimes it's easier to feel the difference that something is making sonically than it is necessarily to hear it. And definitely articulating it is not simple. But you can often just like, if someone says, this is in, this is out, this is in, this is out, you can say, yes, that's in and that's out and get it right every time, but you can't necessarily hear exactly the effect that it's having.
And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, stealing music, especially recorded music, through, because it's so funny. Like we can, and I think this is kind of where the big trees. When you said earlier something about getting it out and exposing more people to it is, and thinking about it that way, you just think, well, it's like a bat signal for just slightly more intelligent yet emotionally driven people who care about things in a way perhaps a little bit more than the quickest and easiest way. Yeah, where are they? Where are those people? I mean, not just for the sales numbers of your company, but I mean for my dinner parties and all these, just finding people, especially in as we move, as we bungle into the future, like that is hard. And when you're like, I admit fully to being like sort of, that looks cool, I need it. I'm not, guitars, whatever. But and then since I got interested in studio equipment, or more so than I ever was, I my engineer is younger than me, and he definitely has an appreciation for older tube gear, but I every time I'll buy things here and there, and I'll think, oh, he's so excited by it, or he'll be into this, and sometimes you just it really is a very particular thing that does, and it takes up this much space, and it's enormously heavy, and I'm not even sure it's going to work all the time, and but there's a comfort to me in pointing that thing and saying, put it through that, because I know, like if it's an old Altec PC, I know that was built at this time and at this factory under these conditions, and they were using these components, and that doesn't happen anymore. And that's it. It's like, I don't know what an analogy would be, but just sort of, this was a very finite, like a very finite period of engineering and sort of accomplishment in this world that is sort of gone. And it's just like, it's not that long ago. And so in a sense, on the cosmic clock, this is 10 minutes ago, if that, where this is like state of the art gear. This is the best and the brightest, or the latest and greatest. Now, anyway, I mean, the big trees is, and everything you make is sort of in line with that. It's it's a version of that. It creates in my head that sort of excitement and that spirit. And again, like we've said before, it's all stories you tell yourself. Some people might go in, they don't give a shit what their guitar is going through. They just play, they leave, whatever their song. That's them. It's great. For me, it is very exciting to imagine where something was made, and why these choices were made, and who is a fan of this gear, who's not a fan of this gear. And just like there's a whole story around these techniques and these uh I don't know, whatever, these kind of methodologies. I don't know, there's just lots, and there's still tons to be mined. And in this day and age, if you can sort of master what these wonderful things have to offer, I mean, you'll be doing radically sounding stuff, because on some level, even if it's not a million miles away from anything you can create with other items, there is just going to be something different. And or there'll be something different in your playing, because you're the kind of person that is being inspired by the just the relationship with your equipment. And that's one of the big things that I recognize in your work, is that it creates a place to have a more direct relationship with your playing and what you do.
Yeah,
and the choices you make through your hands and your mind.
that's so well said. And it's the thing with art, and I was having this discussion with a friend who works with me yesterday. She makes music as well, but what did she do? I think she did a degree in photography, maybe. She's super into art in a way that I don't really get visual art necessarily, but we're just talking about the way that art is communication, and the it's not just about communication with other people, it's also kind of communication with your inner life as well. This is kind of maybe getting a bit woo-woo now, but it's
No, that's where I live. That's it.
do you know what I mean? And it's there's a way to kind of get into that flow state, for want of a better word. And I think when that communication and that relationship with your playing is when that loop is as short as possible with what you're playing and what you're hearing back. And I'm not entirely sure what I mean by the loop is short, but it's like there's
No, well, I'll tell you what it is, because I was looking at your website for inspiration here, because I was like, is there something technical I need to understand before I get into this conversation? But there was something you wrote about the big chopper, and I totally interrupted you, but I think it's warranted, because I'm going to quote back something from your website that just totally rang true for me. It's something like, there's something preceded, but emphatically focused on the amplifier as inspirational tool. And I can say 100% that I've played through beautiful amps before, and yours the same thing. It's like, aha, this is why people will sort of like cross oceans and and rivers to plug into these things, because the minute you hear back your hands through this thing, you're you're just like the positive affirmation is palpable, and you're just like and that's what I think what you're talking about, the loop. When you plug into something and you're sort of like, it's not, that it could be anywhere from like, can we just do, I need a minute to get, or like, oh my God, I should quit music, I can't, that sounds awful, like, so that's the loop running in a negative way. But um there's a few moments in my life that I've had that extreme, immediate, positive loop, and that amplifier that I got from you is one of them. I sent you a video. I was like, the minute I plugged it in, right? It was sort of like this. I'm great. I sound great, and that's kind of, that's, again, that's a story I'm telling myself, but it's if I plugged into another amplifier, I'm sure it wouldn't have been the same way. So whatever was happening between the electronics in the guitar through that cable to my ears, which looks like a loop to me, it raised the positivity and the confidence and the creative sort of, energy in the room. And I was there by myself. I had to reach out to you. Or no, maybe my Michael was there with me. But anyway, that's what I think you're talking about when you say the loop. That's why I cut you off.
That's
Inspirational
perfect.
tool.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny that you read the stuff on the website, because I agonized over the copy on the website. And I a couple of times I tried to get someone to write it for me, and they just didn't. It was, I've got such a specific idea of, you're walking a tightrope between being too like overly verbose and then also cliched, and all of that again is like it's taking away from the directness of what I want to say. And so it would have taken me half an hour to get what I wanted out, and you've just read it in a sentence there. That's it. So
Well,
you're
and
right
also
to
it
cut me
kind of,
off.
but it speaks to everything that this stuff is in some sense. I mean, it literally is a direct box. You can use it in a very guy made it's a good guy. He knows what he's doing. I'm good. But then at the same time, you can get as deep into it as humanly possible, and really dial in some subtle things, and you change a little bit about the level that you're you know here or there, you're on your instrument, or, you can really, it's endless, and I think that's a beautiful way of saying, you're sitting there struggling over how to communicate. You feel like you want to be direct, but there is so much more behind this stuff. And at the same time, it's very simple, but very complex. But at the end of the day, who cares as long as it feels good? And, you are interested in all of that. And that is why these are special things, special items.
That's great. Yes, thank you. Okay. This is a bit of a non-question. What's the single best and worst thing about the big trees?
Oh, I couldn't say. I mean, the best, I think, this without the word single, like I'd say the best thing about the big trees is that it's it is, or depending on who you are, it's way more than just a box that does an electronic, it has a technical purpose. It's an inspiring piece of equipment that can bring about new ways of thinking. So I'd say that's and open up your mind to different, all sorts of things, different possibilities musically, different interests, scientifically, whatever. So that's probably or maybe let's just say the simple best thing about it is that it sounds good. How's that? And there you go. That's another example of everything we just talked about before. And then the worst thing, I wouldn't. I don't know if there's a. I don't know if there's a worst thing. I mean, I guess. I don't think of. I don't think of anything.
That's good. I'm going to clip that, because I think Ronnie said effectively the same thing. There is no worst thing about the big trees. So I'll just stack all of those next to each other, and everyone will be in no doubt that there is no bad thing about the big trees, apart from the fact that it's $1,000.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was gonna say, but I mean, that would be like only for in the context of like a 16-year-old getting it, or like a kid who doesn't have all the money in the world to blow on subtle and intellectually um kind of based equipment, I guess. Like yeah, but that's not even the worst thing. I mean, that's it's actually quite and it doesn't have the cute little paintings on it. Those other things.
Okay, we are on question 9. Is there a favorite project that you've used it on?
Well, favorite project. I mean, the bass tone in the song of mine called "The Night Won't Scare Me," and only because, I mean, I feel like that was the first um, when I came up with that song and came up with the bass to that song. I instantly knew where I was going with that bass and what it was going to go through. I did it on the demo. I used to I used to raise my arm about it in the car listening to it on the demo, and I achieved the same thing on the studio recording on the album. And it just happens to be, one of the songs of mine that people know the best. So in a sense, knowing, and it's one of those other, I'm always writing, I'm always coming up with ideas. My life and my schedule doesn't always allow for me to do what I did with that album, the second Plural One album, which was sort of conceive it, demo it, and then record it in kind of one continuous sort of time period. And that song even predated the most of the writing for that album, because I came up with the chords and that I came up with the music for that with the Chili Peppers, but I didn't come up with the bass until after I knew that it was going to be my song. So it was a rare occasion where the Big Trees was in mind before the bass was plugged in, and I knew that I knew where I was going to start, and yeah, that was yeah. I can't even remember exactly what the question was, but I think that was fun.
That's well, that kind of answers question 10 as well, because question 10 was, is there any project which would have sounded very different without the Big Trees? So that's kind of two birds with one stone, unless you've got another.
Well, I don't know if this doesn't really answer the question, but I'll tell you, every time I hear that song, I think there's that big trees, like there's the big trees, and it's the kind of thing and I think of you, and I think of, just kind of texting you about pizza or this or that, and it sort of reminds me of a friendship, and it's like, I could have put that bass through anything. The engineer, the guy I recorded that album with, gets great bass tones. He has a little chain in his studio, and that's what some of the other songs on the record were. But that song in particular, I knew exactly where I was going, what I was doing, and I think about it every time.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, last question. We're nearly done. Who have you told about it?
Um, well, I remember telling people about it before I even found mine, which is funny. So I can't even remember who, but I remember bringing it up in conversation, after sort of talking about it with Eric, and thinking like, oh, I need to get one. Actually, I have one. But before, during lots of touring for me. And so I feel like I've told, or I've discussed it with everyone I know who would uh, be remotely interested or remotely, kind of uh, enhanced by its inclusion in their life. I wouldn't bring it up with just anybody, but yeah, no, I feel like it's been a I'm probably trying to force it on people more than I should. Like, here, you should put I have 3 of them now and a rack mount one. So 5 technically.
That's it. Yeah.
And one of mine is actually on loan to my old engineer friend. So he's just down the road from me, studio wise. They're on the same street. So he's got one. He's probably using it all over whatever album he's making right now. Like I said, Steve McDonald from Red Cross, but every bass through it on this record we're making. Yeah. I think. Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I can't list off names, but a lot of people that I speak to about such things.
Well, that's much appreciated. And it's strange existing in my workshop, which is basically the same as existing in my head. And I mean, it's the same as music, I suppose, because you let's say just a song, you create a song and you think it's good, and then you think it's terrible, and then you think it's good, and then you hate it, and then you kind of come to an agreement with it that well, okay, we're going to coexist. And then it goes out into the world and you get like little spots of, oh, we think this is cool, and you get little bits of that, and then it kind of filters away, and then you're just left inside your head and you're like, well, I think it's still good. I mean, people are still buying the song, or people are still buying the pedal. I think it's good, but without having again, it's about communicating and it's about relationship. And because I don't hear about, other than on Instagram stories or whatever, everyone isn't going to tell me every time they use it. And so therefore my brain is playing little games with you, like, well, maybe they're not using it anymore. Maybe that's and so to hear somebody who is using it all the time and telling everyone else about it all the time is so gratifying. And it kind of it helps you to get through dark nights of the soul when you're like, why am I even doing this? What's the point?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there you go. That's a loop because I mean, you make the things that I put sounds through, and we're both thinking the same things about our stuff. And yeah, but I think, like what you make and hopefully what I make is, some stuff that does that for another person. I mean, I know your stuff, your creations and your thinking and your mind does that for me. Uh, and a friend of mine just sent me a screenshot of that song I just mentioned with that bass, being her, like Spotify most listened to song or something of this year. So there you go. I mean, that's that. Uh, the bass is, bass is kind of my favorite part of that song. So, uh,
That's the loop.
and it wouldn't have been what it was without Big Tree.
And now you've just told me, so that's the loop completed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Uh, where was, yeah, there was, I mean, it is, we could kind of talk longer and more obnoxiously, I'm sure, about the fact that it does require a certain kind of person to sort of buy the story. But at the end of the day, there are things that are just a story and it's all kind of fluff, and you buy, you either buy that piece of equipment or it's like, oh, there's a hype around that thing. It doesn't really do anything, whatever. It's not the greatest thing. But in this case, I mean, it is a really special piece of equipment, and it's a really special item, and it's made by a really special person and a really special mind and a really sensitive kind of creative mind. And even the old tube stuff that we like and appreciate, and those were still, they were conceived and executed just on a greater scale, but they were conceived and executed by people who had these visions and these dreams and these ideas. But this is like a size of this operation. I mean, you are getting a lot of love with each unit, and yeah, we need more of that in the world. And as we've said a couple times, there is a loop that is created here with this the big trees in particular, but just your stuff in general. Um, and we will need more of that. Things are changing faster than ever before, and I think the big trees or the world is definitely a better place for the big trees growing in it.
That's great. And maybe on a last note, I met Eric, I think it was Brixton Academy, maybe, and he was talking about the big trees, and he said, "Man, I wish I could just run my whole life through it sometimes."
And how crazy is that statement? But how much sense does it make? I mean, to me, it makes sense. I mean, it's got to make a weird kind of sense to you since you made it. So, um, but I mean, that's almost one of the highest compliments. I mean, I actually say about Eric that he lives life, he lives life well. So like the way he lives life is admirable and inspiring, and it's he just really lives life well. And if he's trying to run his whole life through the big trees, then you know you do the math.
Yes, indeed. I'm not sure my math is quite good enough for that, but yeah, I
Well,
can.
maybe he is running it through. Maybe he is running. I mean, he is running his whole life through the big trees. I mean, if that's the idea that came into his head, then he clearly is. And that's what I'm talking about. Life lived well.
That's great. Josh, thank you so much. I don't want to keep you from your precious early morning. Well, it's not so early morning anymore, is it?
Yeah, no, I get up early these days. This was perfect for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will, once I've gathered a few more in, I will start. I'll ping you some little snippets of what I'm thinking of dropping out. And just if there's anything that you don't want me to put out, I would rather run it by you first. And once I'll probably edit down what we've got, because it's going to be, I can't see how long this has been, but probably over an hour, isn't it? And as interesting as it is for me, actually no, maybe I'll just leave the whole thing. I'll let you know anyway. I'll ping you a link to it so you can say yes or no, or please can you.
I'm sure you don't have to. I stumbled minimally, and you know I'm having a shockingly high amount of words vacate just as they get to the launch position. So I'm not sure whether to be worried yet, but I mean when like in this kind of case, like I'm not thinking a couple words ahead. Like what can I say that's a good word, and then I'll stumble upon some very basic word. So yeah, no, but I don't think that was happening to the degree that it can these days.
My brain does exactly the same thing, and my dad is similar, and I find it so frustrating. But it doesn't do it all the time. It's if I'm nervous, or if I'm do you know what I mean? And so like the sentence is all strung together. It's like it's strung together in my head, and then before that clothesline of words can get to my mouth, one of them, the most simple word, is taken away from the sentence, and there's just a,
Mm-hmm.
a void there, and and then you're stumbling for this.
Well, I've definitely learned about myself in the last couple of years that there is some sort of relationship, or there is a cognitive deficiency when I am sort of, I guess, on the spot or nervous in a way, but I don't feel that way in my daily life. But it's pretty much why I don't play live solo, because, or it's one of the big reasons, because I have a terrible time remembering lyrics, and I could do it if if I played in a band and we rehearsed every day and it just became muscle memory, everything, songs, everything. It just becomes second nature to me, and it's almost like breathing and like walking. I can sort of play like once you're sort of a month or two into a tour, I could sort of do it with my eyes closed and basically like ballet dancing all over the stage and almost falling and all this. At the beginning with lyrics and singing, because I'm kind of conscious of my voice. I don't want to overuse it, and I've been having trouble with that lately. But then remembering the words and the chords and the fucking effects and whatever it is. When I was on that Pearl Jam tour, like I had a shocking amount of memory failure. At the same time, it's because I don't know the songs and the lyrics as well. But in order to get that, I would have to be rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing. And I still think I would fail in that circumstance because I'm doing three things up here at the same time. And then, there was something that happened like last year. Someone asked me, well, name five of these, or name your favorite this. And I had nothing. And I know a huge list of, it was like, name your favorite Philadelphia Philly, like sports team, like name anyone on the team for the last 100 years, and I couldn't come up with a single one in that moment. And similar to when people ask me, what's your favorite this? I've got nothing. And I think it's just to do with this sort of, you're on the spot, you have no ability to access, your mind, you're more in a odd protective mode, or like, I don't know. It's something psychological, but I take some sort of like comfort in I guess just understanding that that can happen. And I don't think I'm worried about the loss of vocabulary these days, because my brain is just fucking overloaded. And if it happened and I was living in the country, like in the English countryside, and I had nothing but a stack of books and a fireplace, and it was still happening, I'd be worried. But I'm like basically, doing too much.
I concur. I concur. Yeah. Well, I hope, are you going to get some time off over the next
Well,
week?
you're a lot closer to the English countryside than I am. But
But I have no excuse then. And I have a stack of books. So what am I doing?
get out there. Am I gonna have time off? Yeah, a couple days. I think 24th, 25th, 26th are off. Yeah, but but yeah, like holiday. I actually love Christmas. I love this holiday time, but I've been working nonstop since August, really. So when I get days off these days, like I most of the time, and I don't think I'll do it this time, but there was a couple. I worked on this record from November to no mid October to mid November, and we had like 4 days off total. And two of them, I woke up, read for a bit, drank a lot of tea, so I was caffeinated, and I couldn't move. At noon, back in bed, and it was just shattering. So days off are spent either just resting, like physically being forced to rest, or getting the enormous amount of life stuff done. So it just every day feels like work to me these days. So there's no actual time off.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I hope at least you get some solace from getting some life stuff done over the next few days. And I hope it's not quite as relentless after your days off somehow, maybe.
Thank you. Likewise, and I shouldn't complain to someone with 3 kids. Okay.
I mean, yeah, so one kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, it's all kind of the same. And one of them is 17, so she kind of takes care of herself pretty much. But yeah, it's I think you if you're of that kind of mentality, that kind of mind, then you just fill your schedule with stuff anyway, whether it's kids or it isn't kids, if it's recording, if it's doing work, if it's helping at the homeless shelter, whatever it is, if you're of that kind of mindset, you're going to fill your life with stuff, and it can all be good stuff, but there is a level beyond which you're kind of doing yourself a disservice and you need to take a break.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I obsessed lately about the divide between technological advancement and human ability, or the human mind, and just society at large. How much we can actually adapt, or with what speed can we adapt to the changes that are coming toward us? And I think we are shown these days that we can't really, like in certain ways, some of us might be able to, or some might think they can, but absolutely not. So, we're kind of what's the first song on my first album? See, I can't even remember the name of it. Barreling. We're barreling toward something.
Yeah, I think
So yeah, but yeah, I I I am honored to be, even remotely a part of the Audio Kitchen family, and uh, I appreciate everything you do.
well, that gladdens my heart more than I can say. And I have to return the compliment and say thank you so much for understanding what we're trying to do, what I'm trying to do, and being so gracious and so generous with your time and your money as well. Because let's not forget that you buy stuff from me.
Oh, and by the way, not only is the amp being used, like in the few times we've swapped the amp out just to let others have a shot at being it. It's every guitar. Oh no, not every guitar, but every, because sometimes there's two at once. But your cabinet is just the star of the show. These, just from a live cabinet, you know, um, it just does so much with the two speakers, and yeah, great.
That's
Do
amazing.
you can you or have you thought of, or am I stupid and there is such a thing? Like, can you do a stereo big trees, or like, would you be able to take the big trees essentially and turn it into like a mini version of a like an Altec compressor, and or like just like a boxed, or an old RCA, and have it be a stereo sort of notched level to where you can use it as singles or two at once, or but if one wanted to, it could be your sort of mix bus thing,
Mm.
like how I use it, because I'm basically using it. I'm using two of them sometimes as my, they're the final stage before it goes. The module. One thing I didn't talk about, and I kept thinking like, I'll work it into the next question, but the modular synthesizer. I don't have I sent you a picture of my asinine setup? Well, I'll send you a picture of the setup for the Elton John record I did. Did I tell you that I was working on that? Because I signed an NDA, so I'm not like sure. I'm not supposed to like talk about it, I guess, until it's out. I don't even know. That stuff makes me laugh. But yeah, I'll send you a picture of my setup there. But the big trees, or two of them, are my sort of last step coming out of the rig, into whatever I'm recording uh, onto. So, that it's just like one extra level of, either just clean, bigger, warmth, kind of whatever the mashing of sound, whatever, all of it being fed through in a stereo mix, or I get to overdrive the whole thing. But anyway, yeah. So I was wondering if you could do like a stereo one. It seems like these days, with the way people, especially synth players, use it, could be, because you always have to come out of your synthesizer into a PA or whatever, and they usually just like a little module
Hmm.
with stereo out. And I'm back when I used to do it with John Frusciante, when we were making those solo records of his in the early 2000s, and I had all the analog system stuff, the Inc. British company, and he had all the Dope stuff, which is German. Uh, Getting into it, I remember, like, to treat stuff. That was where my long sort of, I don't understand, mic level, line level, like, fuck it, I hate this shit. So that was where I just could never understand why we always had to boost the signal of the thing being treated going into the synth, and then when we shot it back into the desk, why he had to account for it. Because it's not that I just didn't understand which direction I still can't. But anyway, like the Doper made this uh, input module with a pretty heavy gain level. I mean, a pretty heavy gain knob, and it sounds amazing to overdrive stuff through just that module. But Analog Systems never made anything like that. So in
Hmm.
order to go in and treat for the longest time, I had to get this Doper because it had a 1/4 inch in. It was the easiest thing. But then going out too, it was like you either came out of a passive, you're going 1/8 inch to whatever, and you had to adapt it into the rig, and then you had the level thing to contend with. Now there's so many companies, everyone's making synths, so there's many an output module with its own level. And it's like there's a company called, maybe you'd be interested in checking out what this little module. It's called the Stereo Strip,
Okay.
and it kind of functions as my pre big trees, or if I don't have big trees around, it's like my last step before going to the output. And it's like a little, this big, and it's supposed to be, it's inspired by a Neve module, and it's got 3-band EQ and level, and then it's mildly CV, uh, controllable, and yeah, and I think often about there being one big trees unit, to where, because no matter what, it doesn't matter, but you're always like, am I at right? Is there, you know,
Yeah. So what you're saying is if I could build a switched gain and EQ bank so that you would know that you were exactly the same on each side, or if you had just had a stereo switch on there so that it was changing left and right at the same time by the same amount.
Yeah, I guess so. Because the rack mounted unit you built is essentially two big trees, right? And that, but when we go mix through that, it's the same. It's just like having two pedals in front of me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it. But I'm also talking about like a rather than it looking like a pedal, like just for the reinvention of a thing for people that maybe are synth players or studio people, just because just aesthetically if you're not going to do a because you'd probably I don't know if you need to make something that big, but you could do like a new thing, and it would really sort of approach that aspect of what the big tree is. I think is great for. Whereas I just feel like the way it is as a pedal, it doesn't occur to people. Like I feel more and more like it's these funny little things that people they see a pedal. Hi,
Hi.
like
Is
Dad,
this
why did you say
Tobias?
it like that?
This is Josh.
Hi, nice to meet you. Yeah, I just feel like people see a pedal and they're like, you know, I've got studio gear for that.
Yeah.
And if you make like a sort of a vertical box that goes upright, and it's you plug it in and it's a dedicated stereo or could be stereo, whatever. I was just trying to give you ideas to lose sleep over.
Yeah. Well, I need definitely more ideas to lose sleep over. I'm sure you can identify with that. I don't lose enough sleep over any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Are you coming to tell me I need to come in?
No.
No, you just came to hang out.
Well, I think you're going to get him anyway because I think we've finished, right? I
We
think
have
I think we've
finished.
come to the end of our chit chat. I wrote a couple other things down. I was like, um, imperial DI tone, like the last record I did with Frusciante was called the Empyrean,
Oh,
so I'm
really?
always, yeah. I mean, that was like 15 years ago or more, but yeah, anytime that word is used, I'm always, my ears always perk up. Uh, yeah, no, I think you did a great job with the copy on the website.
Well, I thank you very much for that. Yeah, it was it didn't come easily, but I mean, when I read it, I'm like, well, I actually didn't do a bad job with the copy on the website.
Yeah, because it's not, yeah, it's very easy to misstep, I would imagine. But this sort of like I wrote here, we hand built West London. The big tree has proven itself a creative inspiration in the studio. Its ever expanding list of tasks include reamping guitar front end into a DAW, clean gain, DI line driver, hardware insert, all manner of sources from synths to drums, world assertive vocals, and then a twin attack or entire mixes. And I mean that's just perfectly put. But it kind of like I can't think of another thing that does all of that as well, so that was kind of just well encapsulated.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, it's good that it has stood the test of time because you never know when you write it, and it's a bit like songs. You write a song and you think it's good, and it's kind of document of where you are at the point that you write the song, and then some of them they do stand the test and some of them don't. Um, it's good that at least you feel that my copy has stood the test of the last 10 or 12 years or however long that's been.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of much like vinyl, like vinyl's reemergence in the market. It's like what you devised is not, it's already kind of past, just that moment has had its day. So your creations are always going to have a place, and probably more so and more so and more so and more so.
I hope so. I hope so. And at some point, not now, but at some point, did I tell you about that?
No.
So it's we're really not going to get into it. It's we used to make a stereo filter unit called the Mutator. Did you ever hear of that?
That was one of your first things, maybe?
Yeah. So this is a kind of guitar pedal version of that it's just the simplest version that we could make because they started making the equivalent filter chip again. And it does sound really good. So we're going to make a simple version of that, release it, and then add things to it as we go along. But obviously I think it's a stereo unit, and each channel has 9 knobs and 5 switches or something. Well, that's not going to fly on a guitar pedal. So we've had to shrink it down as much as possible. But it's interesting. Once I've got some prototypes made up, I'll shoot one over to you, and you can give me some feedback.
Okay. Literal and figurative.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for including me. Sorry, it took a minute to figure out a time. I hope you're feeling better.
I mean, I'll get better. It's no problem, and never a problem on the time front, because I know you're so busy. So I appreciate very much your time this morning. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, not at all. Good to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.
See you again. See
All
ya.
right.
Bye.
Drive safe.
Thank you. Bye.